Hey, y'all. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Unfeigned, the podcast. I'm Jay. I'll be your host. And if this is your first time tuning in, welcome to the podcast. Like I say all the time, the most effective way to listen to this podcast is to listen from the beginning, but anybody can come into this podcast at any time. So if anything doesn't make sense, chances are if you just go back and listen to a previous episode, it'll probably clear some things up. For those of you that have been following for a while and listening from the beginning, man, I appreciate y'all. I can't say that enough, how grateful I am for those of you that are listening, that follow along with me on this journey. I'm honored that you joined me on this journey. And I'm excited to see, where this is going to go and how we're going to grow. And but just to recap, it's good to recap every once in a while, just so y'all know, the purpose of this podcast, for so long I've hid behind this quote unquote mask. And I was never willing to be vulnerable or transparent, always chose the opposite because I wanted to portray this image to people, not necessarily because I was concerned about what people thought and all that kind of stuff, but I wanted them to see what I wanted them to see. And so it was almost like living a double life, really, because on one hand, I'm saying, hey, this is what I look like. This is who I am. And people's perceptions were based on what they see. And if I could control that a little bit, I tried that. Meanwhile, I'm like dying inside, right? I have skeletons in my closet. I have all these secrets and all this pain and hurt, and I'm not dealing with any of it. And so for so long, I did that. And the purpose of this podcast is to do the opposite. And that, hence the name of the podcast, Unfeigned. This is my rewritten story, my unmasked story. I've chosen to be vulnerable and transparent and honest and open. And so this podcast is my story. Now, if you've listened to a few episodes ago, you'll know that I recorded over 100 episodes, like right after the divorce, right after I got kicked out. I recorded over 100 episodes. For me, it was very therapeutic. And it was part of my recovery. And for me, those episodes were very raw and very real. And I debate whether or not, and I debated for a long time, and I still debate whether or not I will publish some of those, right, as a part of this podcast. And I go back and forth because it was very raw. It was very therapeutic. It was very healing for me. It was part of my healing. It was part of my recovery. For me to just share the raw emotions that were on my heart based on things that I was experiencing during that time. For me, that provided a lot of healing. And so this podcast is my healed version. And it's focused primarily on the last 9 years, right? This has been a 9-year journey, starting from the divorce to present day. And just as a recap, over the last 9 years, I have sectioned off these time periods into seasons, right? And we have, if you go back and listen to previous episodes, each episode, it has been like a season, minus this last one where it was a 3-part series. But the podcast from here on out is going to focus on present day. And so I will go back from time to time and just speak, on things that happened, the previous years. But primarily this podcast will now focus on present day. This is my healed version. This is my story of healing and growth and redemption and restoration. And I'm going to speak on those things. So I'm excited to see where this goes. But that's just a quick recap, probably longer than I wanted it to be. But I want to share a few things, and then we're going to get into something that was a big part of my life for a long time. But first, I want to share. Over the last few episodes, it's been like story time with Jay, and I've been sharing things that have happened, over the last 9 years, and things I've gone through, things I've experienced, what I've learned, uh, specifically the last 3 episodes, which was a 3-part series, were a lot of just telling things that happened. And that's fine. I don't mind doing that, and I'll do that from time to time. I don't want this podcast to be that, though, just where it's just me telling stories of my life, although it will be that from time to time. But you heard that about my experience with jail, and um, I mentioned somewhere in there, I mentioned about this car that I had, and I'm just going to share a few things. This car that I had. Now, when I bought this car, um, it it was necessary. It was an appropriate thing to do. It was a necessary thing to do because at the time I didn't have transportation. I had a job and I needed to get to my job, but I didn't have a way to get there. And so it's kind of scrambling for a car. And, I don't know about you, but in those scenarios, anytime you're scrambling to make a decision or rushing to make a decision, it's sort of, it's a crapshoot, really. Like it could go either way. Um, Long story short, an old mechanic friend of mine, uh, I reached out and just was asking if he knew of any cars and if he knew anybody selling any cars. And he had happened to have this car. And I won't go into it a whole lot, but basically, it didn't have a license plate. Um, it had a title with the signatures necessary for the title to be transferred. The car was sold in an estate sale, and so I had the signatures. It was notarized. But long story short, the DMV needed some forms that nobody knows where they are, and at this point they're gone or whatever. And so the DMV wouldn't accept paperwork, and it's been a long, long road. This was when I got this car. It was before I ended up going. It was probably last summer or earlier, and since then have been trying desperately to figure out how to either get this original paperwork that the DMV needed, which at this point, I find out it's not even available. Um, all the way to I've got the 86-page court file, the actual court file, naming the two signatures I have on the title, naming them as the executors of the estate. But the DMV won't accept it. Um, so I can't transfer the title to my name. So I'm driving this car around with no license plate. And for a long time, and I got pulled over numerous, numerous times. And it was a headache. Obviously, you heard a little bit about it when I got pulled over the time that I was arrested. Um, but I got pulled over in that car a lot, and it was the same story every time, same procedure every time. Had all the paperwork, handed all the paperwork to the cop. They would check it out. It would check out. They would let me go. But it was just sort of like a headache because I knew that if I got pulled over, that I would have all the necessary paperwork, even documenting that I'm trying to get this form the DMV wants. And side note, the DMV wouldn't issue me a temporary tag either, so I couldn't do that. Well, I knew that I would be okay. I mean, with the exception of getting arrested that time. But if I got pulled over, I wasn't scared to get pulled over just because I didn't have a license plate. It was just super inconvenient, super inconvenient. And I always kind of just drove on edge, right? I was just always looking out for, even though I didn't do anything wrong. And if they pulled me over, I would just have to go through the process. But there was just always, this nervousness that I was going to get pulled over. It was just going to be inconvenient. And especially during times when I had to get somewhere fast, not speeding, but just in a hurry to get somewhere. And I couldn't necessarily have some unplanned stop, like a traffic stop. And it happened a lot. Trust me, it happened a lot. Well, I'm praying for a resolution to the title issue. And I'm also praying that that God would figure out how to provide me with a car, right? That I would either be able to figure out this title thing, or if not, that I'd be able to figure out how to get a different car. Well, praying and praying and praying, and the car without the license plate, it needed some work. So, I put money into it, and it was costing money, and then it just started to go. The steering It lost all power steering, so it didn't have any power steering. Um, it was a sketchy car and wasn't real safe to drive. But it was one of those things where it was safe enough, but at any moment something could go on the car, and that would have been it. But I had to get to work, and I had to get around, and um, so then after I go to jail and I get out and I have this car, it's still now I don't have a job to get to per se, but I'm still driving around, no license plate, and everything's just weighing on me at this point, right? Just everything piled on. And fast forward a little bit, I'm driving to go see someone, and it was during the day, and it was on a busier road, right? And so I'm driving, and I'm doing the speed limit. Well, I'm doing a little over the speed limit. I was probably going about 8 miles or so, 8 or 9 miles over the speed limit, right? And at this point, it was probably closer to 8 miles an hour or 8 miles an hour over the speed limit. And it's on a semi-major highway. It's a pretty famous highway where I'm at, but there's a lot of traffic, and there's 3 lanes, 2 go straight, 1 goes right or straight. And so I'm in the right lane, and I notice a green light up ahead. And so I'm just driving. The flow of traffic is just driving. Well, from the best that I can remember is that I'm driving, and I'm just driving normal. I'm about to go through this green light, and up ahead there was some traffic. And so I'm guessing that some of the cars started to slow down behind me because there wasn't anybody else going through this light at the time. I don't really remember if I was just out ahead of them or if they started to slow down because they didn't want to catch the yellow light or red light in between. Although there wasn't a whole lot of traffic ahead of me where they would have had to do that. So I think it was just that I was out ahead of these cars. There wasn't a whole lot of traffic on the road that day. But anyway, so long story even longer, I'm going through this green light, and I'm just driving. Out of the corner of my eye, see this car just come out of nowhere. What I found out, apparently, based on the traffic cams and everything, is that this lady, she just turned left. She either had to run a red light or thought she could make it in front of me. I don't know. So this car pops out in front of me. I'm doing like 54 miles an hour. The speed limit is 45. At this point, at this section, it might have even been 50 or 55, but I'm doing 54 miles an hour. So around 53, 54. And I see this car cut in front of me, and I slammed on the brakes, but the brakes did not do anything. It was too close. And so the only thought that went through my head was, I'm going to kill this lady if I keep going straight. So I tried to turn the wheel to the left as hard, no power steering. So I'm yanking it. And I got enough at an angle where I didn't hit her passenger side head on. I kind of hit in between the passenger side and the back door, sort of closer to more on the back door side, but at an angle. And it demolished my car. Both airbags went off. The front was smashed into the front of my car was smashed into the front seat. Parts everywhere. Right. So long story short, I get in this accident, and I'm just thinking, you got to be kidding me. Like, really? Like, one thing on top of the other. Right. So my car it's totaled. Right. Um, so I'm trying to go through insurances, and they're waiting on the police report, and finally get this police report. And after the police checked the traffic cams and all that, I was determined that it was her fault and that I would be receiving a payout. Right? That they were this claim went into her insurance, and they told me the amount and everything. I was gonna get this payout. So we go through the process, and wouldn't you know that because the title issue of not being able to be transferred to my name because the DMV won't accept the court document, or any of the paperwork that I had, can't do anything with it. So the claim is just out there. The claim is still out there, but I can't do anything with it because at this point, it looks as though the title will never be able to be transferred into my name. So I get hit by this lady. My car is totaled. I mean, it's like a total loss, undrivable, barely can even use it for parts. Um, and I can't settle the claim. I can't receive a payout for the car. Can't settle the claim because of this title issue. So it's a bit of a headache, right? So I'm without a car. Um, and so it's just kind of been like all of this, right? Things like happening, one thing after another. And I just keep going back to what I've talked about on previous episodes. I just keep going back to uh, those three kind of um, attitudes, the mindset, the mental mindsets. The one being um, whatever you put your attention to is what you're going to become attracted to. Whatever you become attracted to is what you'll pursue. The other one is, you choose, commit, and confront. Um, and so, um, and the other being, be curious, not judgmental, right? And so, mainly during this time, I go back to the whatever I put my attention to, I'm going to become attracted to. Whatever I become attracted to, I will pursue. So here I have all this stuff. It's all built up from, and you heard about it all over the previous episodes. So you got everything like that. Then I get into this car accident, and now I have no method of transportation. So not only have I lost everything because of jail and what's on my record, now I have no transportation, right? So it just makes it even more difficult. And I continue to remember, like, what am I going to put my attention to? Am I going to put my attention towards negativity? Because legit, I could be negative. My car was totaled and it wasn't even my fault. Regardless of the license plate deal and the title issue, regardless of that, I had a car and I was doing what I needed to do legally. I was pursuing all the right channels and I had all the correct paperwork. And it was just this DMV hangup that they won't accept what I had. And I mean, I got pulled over numerous times and was told, you're okay, just keep pursuing this paperwork, whatever. And so I'm doing all that and I get hit. It's not even my fault. And my car's totaled. So that's just taken from me. And I can have this attitude of negativity. And I can put all of my attention towards woe is me, pity. And I can focus on all the crap that's been happening in my life. I can focus on all the loss and all the pain. And I can focus on all the obstacles and challenges that are now in my way. And if I put enough attention to that, I'll become attracted to it. Because I'll just continue to put my attention towards all that negativity. And what happens is I'll become attracted to it. And when I become attracted to it, I'll pursue it. It's inevitable that what you put your attention to, you become attracted to. And what you become attracted to, you pursue. And had I done that, I would have pursued negativity. And I would have stayed stuck. Instead, I put my attention towards seeking the Lord. I was pissed. I was frustrated. I was angry. I was confused. I was sad. There was a whole range of emotions. And yet I just decided that I was going to focus all of my attention on seeking the Lord. Now, for me, that meant, that also included my putting my attention towards figuring out what I need to do next. And it's been challenging, y'all. It really has been. From, this season, I should have said this in the beginning, but this season that I'm titling this season that I'm in now, jail to present day. Right? And that's going to continue. But I just had to think, What is the next thing that I can do? What's the next thing that I can do in the situation that I'm in, the circumstances that are surrounding me? What's the next thing, the next right thing that I can do? And it's been challenging because I have a lot of obstacles to overcome. And that's fine. Excuse me. Just because I put my attention to things that are good, just because I put my attention to climbing back out of this hole, just because I put my attention towards the Lord, doesn't mean my circumstances are going to automatically change. It just became harder because in the midst of the storm, I was committed to putting my attention towards positivity, towards good, all towards what is the next right thing I can do, towards seeking the Lord. And as I did that, I became attracted to it. And as I became attracted to it, I pursued it more. And what happened was the negativity started to leave. My mindset began to change surrounding my circumstances. And it didn't automatically make them better. And I wasn't running around doing jumping jacks, right? Like, I'm not like, oh, this is fantastic. I have no car, no job. I just got out of jail. This is great. Living the dream. That's not what it was like. It sucks. It's depressing. It's sad. It makes me anxious. It makes me nervous. It's stressful. But in the midst of all that, what this started to do, I was putting my attention to what I just talked about. I became attracted to it and I started to pursue it. And what happened was all of those things were still there. The depression, the sadness, the anxiety, nervousness, the worry, all of those things still were there because I'm still surrounded by the circumstances that I was surrounded by. But they started to become lighter. They started to not have so much weight. They didn't have the power over me that they once had. And that's important because what happens is we put our attention to those things and the attraction that's built up gives them power. And as we pursue those things, it gives it more power. And that power can become crushing to the point where we can't carry it anymore. And then we're stuck. And it's often referred to as a dark place, right? I was in a dark place. He was in a dark place. Well, that's because of the power that these things have in our life. And it stems from that we gave our attention to them. We became attracted to them, and then we started to pursue them. It's funny because I was talking to somebody about our inner critic, right? And that applies to most all aspects of life. Honestly, if you think about it, you think of athletes, teachers, business people, parents, singles, couples, whatever, just in life. And you hear the phrase commonly used like, oh, he's so hard on himself or she's so hard on herself, right? But it's true. We all have this inner critic, right? And this inner critic a lot of times will tell us things like they'll speak to us out of insecurities, right? So for instance, our inner critic might be telling us that we're not good enough because of A, B, C, whatever. Our inner critic may be telling us to be afraid or to be nervous or anxious. Our inner critic may be comparing us to other people. And then we fall into that comparison trap, right? And then all of a sudden our lives just don't look quite as good. And our inner critics speak so much negativity. Unfortunately, all too often, our inner critics speak so much negativity and so much fear and so much insecurity. And the problem is we put our attention to that. And what happens? We become attracted to it. And then what happens? Then we pursue that. It's inevitable. And the more we do that, the more attention we give to it, the more power we give it. Inevitably, once we give our attention to it, we're going to become attracted to it. And we give power to it. And then we pursue it. Again, it's inevitable. We put our attention to it, we become attracted to it, we pursue it, And now we've given it complete power over us. And then what starts to happen? Well, then we believe our inner critics. We believe them. And so for me, I was there. Trust me, I was there. But in my journey of healing, I started to heal from that. Right. And so today, as I sit here, I got some pretty, pardon my French, I got some pretty shitty circumstances surrounding me. Right. But the things that I've given my attention to, that I'd become attracted to, that I pursued, are my healing, are things that will benefit my healing, things that will complement my growth, that will add to my restoration, that will benefit my life. One huge aspect is seek first the kingdom of God. And so every morning, and again, I'm not perfect. Sometimes it's at night, sometimes it's in the afternoon, sometimes I forget. But in general, every morning I get up and I spend some time in the words. I spend time reading the Bible. I spend time praying. And for me, that is important to what I'm putting my attention to. And the more I've put my attention to it, the more I become attracted to it. And I started to pursue it. And so all of these circumstances, all of my situation, my inner critic has lost power over my life. Just like I say, whatever you give your attention to, you become attracted to. Whatever you become attracted to, you'll pursue. Just like I say, that's inevitable. That process is inevitable. It's inevitable that your inner critic will lose power. It's inevitable that your circumstances will become less heavy, will lose power. It's inevitable that all the giants that you're facing will lose power. It's inevitable that the situation you're in will lose power. But it starts with where you're putting your attention to. And that's a mindset. That's a mindset thing, which leads me to the next part, the next life motto or next attitude, where I say choose, commit, confront, right? Because before I can put my attention to something, I have to choose that. And yes, it's extremely simple. And before you think it's oversimplified, just hear me out. It's extremely simple to choose anything. It's not easy. Don't get those two twisted, simple and easy. There's a big difference. It's not easy to make hard choices. Definitely not easy, but it's super simple. It really is. It's as simple as saying, I'm going to do that. Now, before you think I'm crazy or whatever, just because you're like, well, I can't just say I'm going to do that. And you can actually. I didn't say it was easy because the hard part, the difficult part isn't the decision to say I'm going to do that. It's not the choice. The choice is the easy part. That's the simple part. The not easy, the hard, difficult part is when you get to the commitment and the confrontation. So you have to choose this mindset, right? I'm going to choose to put my attention to fill in the blank. Inevitably, you're choosing not to give your attention to the negative, right? To all the giants and obstacles. You're choosing not to, what you're choosing to put your attention to is positive, right? And the good, and what's the next right thing I can do, and so on. But it has to start with a choice. You have to choose that. And so if you are stuck in a place, if you have an addiction that you can't kick, man, you want to break this addiction. You want to break the cycle of experiencing your addiction, doing your addiction, and then stop, and then doing your addiction and stop. And then you want to break that cycle. If you want to break your addiction, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to live like this. Regardless of what the addiction does to your body chemically or what it makes you feel like you want to do, if you're inside saying, I don't want to do this anymore. I need to stop. Right? Maybe you're just in a relationship that you shouldn't be in. Right? Maybe it's a toxic relationship. And you're just like, I can't live like this anymore. We cannot continue like this, right? Maybe it's just a life situation like mine, right? And I'm like, I I just can't see past this obstacle. There's no hope. It sucks. I'm anxious. I'm worried. I'm nervous. I'm scared. Maybe it's like that. And you're saying to yourself, I don't want to be like this. I don't want to feel this. I don't want to be like this. I want to live a normal life. I want to have a normal relationship. I don't want to feel hopeless. I want to feel hopeful. Maybe you're out of work. And you're like, it just doesn't seem like I'm ever going to find work. I mean, the list can go on and on and on. Depression, anxiety, worry, feel like whatever it is, you might feel stuck and you're saying, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to live like this. I don't want to feel like this. I just don't want to do this anymore. It has to start with a choice. You have to choose your mindset. You have to choose what you're going to do, which inevitably means you're choosing what you're not going to do. So, and that goes for a flip side too. Maybe you feel like um, you were made to do a certain thing. You were designed to do a certain thing. You were called to do a certain thing. You have this passion and you just know that that's what you're supposed to be doing, yet you're afraid. You're scared to do it. It comes down to a choice. You have to choose your mindset. Are you going to choose to do it or are you going to choose not to do it? And it is that simple. You choose and say, I will no longer look at pornography. I'm no longer going to drink. I'm not doing drugs anymore. I'm not going to allow this toxic behavior to treat me like this. I'm not going to be angry anymore. I'm not going to disconnect anymore. I'm not going to shut down anymore. I'm not going to lose my patience with my kids anymore. I'm not going to be selfish anymore. I'm not going to be a jerk anymore. I'm not going to be arrogant. I'm not going to disregard my health anymore. I'm going to eat right. I'm going to exercise. Whatever it is, whatever this, I'm not going to do this. I don't want to do this anymore. You need to choose to do the opposite. You need to choose to be more loving or to be more patient, or you need to choose, say, I am not going to do drugs anymore, which means I'm choosing to do what's the next right thing. I'm not going to look at pornography anymore. So I'm choosing to do what's the next right thing. And it really does. It's as simple as a choice. And then it gets hard. Because after that choice, so you're choosing, your choice is, and here's the fun part. Your choice is what you're putting your attention to. So if you have a sexual addiction, which I did. I had a sexual addiction. I had an addiction to pornography for a long time. What you're doing is you're putting your attention to that. And what you put your attention to, you'll become attracted to. And then what you're attracted to, you're going to pursue. We call that an addiction. Or I should say it's called an addiction. And so if you do not want to stay stuck in that vicious cycle, that addiction, and I'm just picking pornography specifically, but you can fill in the blank because pornography was a big part of my life. You don't want to do that anymore. The choice has to be, I will no longer put my attention to that. I'm not giving my attention to that. But it has to be, I choose to give my attention to fill in the blank. And that becomes difficult. That becomes the hard part because now that's simple, but now it becomes difficult because now I have to commit. And before I get into that, I just want to share a little bit. For a long time, pornography was an addiction. And it started when I was young. really. And it was kind of a lifelong process. Not It changed over time, but when it truly became an addiction, um, it was a vicious cycle. It really was. It was a vicious cycle because I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to be like that. But I would do it and then I would stop. Then I would do it, then I would stop. Then I would do it and then I would stop. And every time I would stop, I felt terrible. And it wasn't just I mean, it started before I was married, but then I carried that into my marriage, which means I felt even more terrible. And on a upcoming episode, I'm going to talk more about this pornography issue and over my life. And because when I say this is a journey of healing for me, I'm completely healed. I'm completely healed of my addiction to pornography. And don't get it twisted, because that doesn't mean that the temptation goes away. Just because you're completely, totally healed from something doesn't mean it's not out there, that you're not surrounded by it, that it won't tempt you ever again. Being healed from it, being completely healed, means I don't yield any power to it anymore. And so we'll jump back a little bit. So it was a huge fight. It was a huge battle for me. And I'll tell you what, I thought, and I used to think for a long time, that if I could just not do it, if I could just not do it, if I could just not look at something that I shouldn't be looking at, if I could not, just not do it, just not look at the pornography, right? Not act out because of it, not think those things. If I could just not do it, I'd be fine. I'd be good. And it gave me, and there were times that I did it, right? I didn't do anything, right? And it gave me this false sense of security. It gave me this false sense of healing where I felt like, oh, I'm good. Cool. I'm good. And just because I wasn't doing it, I felt like I'm good. I'm not going to do this anymore. And then I would slip back into the vicious cycle and I would do it again. And this went on for a long time, but I learned something. And I hope this is beneficial for any of you that might be dealing with specifically this kind of addiction, but any addiction really. And really, you can apply this to any situation, because it comes down to finding out, discovering what is at the root. What's at the foundation? What's the root issue? And you can apply that to anything. But like I said, this issue affected my life greatly for a long time, so that's why we're specifically choosing this one. But it happened like that for a long time, and as I began to heal from this, right? Because, well, let me start. What started my healing from this was I had to recognize why I did it. Why would I do this? Right. And honestly, it ultimately led me to try to discover why I had an affair. It's like, I don't want to be that person. After that, I mean, when that happened, I never felt so disgusting in my life. When I had that affair and I thought, I'm the person I never wanted to be. I never thought I would be that person. And it just felt terrible. And I needed to find out why. Like, what is wrong with me? Well, on that mission of discovery, trying to figure out the whys, I realized and I learned, and I'm not trying to insult anybody's intelligence, because you may already know this, and this may seem obvious, but let's just be honest, it's not. It's not obvious. If it was obvious, there would be so much less addiction, right? But what I found was that pornography was not the issue, right? My sexual addiction was not the issue. The issue was I needed I needed to feel validated. And that stemmed from a lot of things over my life. But I needed validation. I needed the applause. I needed the standing ovation. I needed to feel like I was the man. And it doesn't matter what wasn't making me feel that way. That's not the issue. It was that I never dealt with the root. I never dealt with that root cause, that root issue, that I needed to feel this, but it was because I didn't know where my worth came from. I didn't know where my value came from. I didn't know what my identity was. And so I needed to feel this. And it wasn't just pornography that I pursued to try to get this feeling, but pornography gave me this false sense of hope that I was somebody, that I was worth something, that I had value, that I mattered. And here's the crazy thing, it gave me this false sense of control, right? Because I could I could control the environment, right? I was always going to feel like the man, right? Because it's not about a deep emotional connection. I needed to feel like the man, and that gave that to me. Now, I wasn't the man. I didn't all of a sudden have worth or value. I didn't all of a sudden matter. I didn't have an identity. I still had this identity crisis, this value crisis, my worth crisis. I still needed the standing ovation, right? Pornography gave that to me, but for a fleeting moment. And I never dealt with the real issue, which was everything I just said, which was this need for validation, and this need for this standing ovation, this applause, and you're the man, and I never dealt with that. So pornography gave me that feeling, which was a fleeting feeling, and it was a false feeling. And so I kept going to it. And then I would feel terrible. And so then I'd be like, wait, that didn't work. So now I feel horrible. And so I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to do that because that's not. But then my world felt chaotic and out of control. And I felt like I wasn't the man and I wasn't worth anything and I didn't have value. And I don't know what my identity is. And so I would go back to that because it gave me that for just even one moment. But I never dealt with the real issue. And so that is what I gave my attention to. I made the choice to give my attention to that. And the more I gave my attention to it, I became attracted to it. The more I became attracted to it, I pursued it because I wanted to hold on to this false sense of hope and security and worth and value and identity. And ultimately it accumulated or culminated in the affair. And it's unfortunate. I mean, not unfortunate. It's terrible. It's terrible what happened. And I would love to speak to you more about this. So what I'm about to say, if you have questions about it or it's not, or you need it to be clarified, I would be more than willing to do that. Please reach out. unfeignedpodcast@gmail.com, or you can hit me up on any of the social media platforms. But the affair really wasn't even about another woman. And this is painful, honestly, to talk about because I have to revisit this and I, I can talk about it because I'm healed. I can talk about it. Still hurts a little bit because, you're reminded of how ashamed I was. But it really wasn't even about another woman. You see, I lived in two different worlds. I lived in reality and fantasy. And I don't mean fantasy like weird porn stuff. Like I had my reality where I had my family, my wife and kids, and everyday life, real life. And then I had this fantasy where I didn't have to deal with any problems. I was always the man. I always got the kind of attention that I thought I needed. I always felt like I mattered. Nothing ever went deeper than the surface. There was no deep emotional connections and things like that. And because that was real life. Real life was all the the emotions, pain, hurt, laughter, excitement, joy, all that kind of stuff. But in real life, there was always the chance that because I didn't deal with the root issue, that's where it came from. It didn't come from anybody doing anything to me. But in real life, I always had to deal with this feeling that I was not worth it. I didn't matter. I didn't know what my identity was. I wasn't the man. I wasn't getting this standing ovation. But in the fantasy world, I could. And so talking to other women, I felt like the man. Um, yeah, eventually it turned into lying, turned into lies, right? Because obviously, I mean, the whole thing was a lie, obviously, because I was married. But then you start to make up lies. I started to make up lies to control the environment, to control this fantasy world that I lived in, to give me this false sense of I'm the man. And obviously that culminated in the affair, which really wasn't about another woman. Um, and when I realized why did I do that? Why was I like that? Like, what was wrong with me? What was so broken about me? Once I discovered that, what it was, and everything I just talked about, I started to put my attention to that because I didn't want to be like that. I didn't want to be addicted to porn. I didn't want to be have a sexual addiction. I didn't want to live like that. I didn't want to live in two different worlds. I wanted to be the man I was supposed to be, the man I was created to be. I wanted to be the husband I was supposed to be. I wanted to be the father I was supposed to be. Those are all the things I wanted. And when I realized what the root issue was, I started to put all my attention to that. And obviously, my marriage didn't work out, right? I'm divorced. Um, but I didn't lose the chance to become the husband I'm supposed to be because should God give me another chance, I'm going to step into being a husband in my healed version. I'm excited about that. I hope God gives me that chance. I really do. I'm excited about that, but I also could be the man that I'm supposed to be and the father I'm supposed to be. And also if he gives me the opportunity to be the husband I'm supposed to be. And I started to put my attention towards that. And I'll tell you what, talking about a game change, that changed my life. That's who I am today. That's who I am today. When I started to put my attention towards discovering what my identity was, where my worth comes from, where my value comes from. When I started to put all my attention to that, I became attracted to it because I knew I was going to become the man I was supposed to be. And it came down to the choice. The choice was to put my attention towards those becoming better. And then I had to make a commitment, and I made a commitment. And my commitment was to put all of my attention towards that. Because of my commitment, which means I was committed to doing everything I could, anything that I needed to do to see that choice realized. That meant I became super attracted to the idea of this man that I was going to be, to this father that I was going to be, to the husband that I could be one day. I became attracted to that. And so I pursued it and I pursued it and I pursued it. And guess what? Again, I would love to talk to all the details, but I'm healed. I'm healed from my addiction to pornography. I will tell you this. I never, ever thought ever that I would ever say those words. Ever. I never thought I'd be on the other side. You see, because when you're in it and it's so dark and twisted like that, you don't think you'll get out. You think something's wrong with you. You think there's something broken, right? And obviously there's different levels to all this stuff, but I didn't think I'd ever be on the other side of it. And I am. And it all started with a choice. And that choice was to pursue the things that would make me the man I'm supposed to be, the father I'm supposed to be, the husband I'm supposed to be. Should I get another chance to be a husband? And inevitably, as I made that choice, I was automatically making a choice not to pursue or to give any attention towards pornography. And all of that lost power it lost all its power over me. And something else gained power over me, and that was the Lord. Right? Because part of my attention in discovering how I can be the man that I'm supposed to be involved seeking the Lord, seeking the kingdom of God first. And whether you like it or not, or believe it or not, it's true because it's true. It's right because it's right, whatever. For me, giving my attention towards the Lord was part of my healing. It was part of my recovery. And to this day, my attention is there. My attraction is there. I pursue that daily. And it was because of a choice and the commitment that I made to do everything it took to see that choice realized. And I've had to confront many things. God, I've had to confront so many things. But the choice I made, then the commitment I made to see that choice realized, to do whatever it took, and then to confront everything and anything that stood in the way. And so I know this episode might seem like kind of scattered, like all over the place a little bit, but I, I want to share more about things that I've been healed from and how I got there. And that's why I talked about pornography a lot on this episode. I'll talk more specifically about that on future episodes, but I just want to encourage y'all. I know this episode is mainly about this addiction, and but whatever your circumstance, regardless of your circumstance, no matter how bad your circumstance is, it's not oversimplifying something, but it starts with a choice, because that is the simple part. Everything after that becomes extremely difficult. And based on your circumstances, that'll determine the degree of difficulty. Because you have to choose what you're going to put your attention to. And then you have to commit to doing everything it takes to see that choice realized. And then you have to confront everything and anything that stands in the way. Something we'll get into in future episodes also is that commitment. That's super important. And in my healed version, because I used to break commitments. I used to make commitments and break them, right? But in my healed self, my true authentic self that I am today, when I make a commitment to myself, when I commit to something, there is no negotiating. It's non-negotiable. And it has to be that way, or else you'll break your commitment. So when I make a commitment, it means something, and it's non-negotiable. And my commitment to my healing from pornography is non-negotiable. My commitment to my healing overall is non-negotiable, but that's a very specific area that held great power in my life. And I've broken free. And my commitment to stay free, to not yield any power to that, is non-negotiable. Y'all, I'm going to close this episode by saying this. I know that I've said this before. I prayed for this podcast that even just one person listening would be encouraged. And I know that that's happened. Y'all have reached out to me and told me that. And I'm beyond grateful for that. God, I love to connect with people and hear their stories. And when I hear that my story has encouraged somebody or has helped somebody, I can't even express the gratitude. Everything is worth it. My story is worth it. God having built me for this, it's worth it. And I just want to say that I don't just want this podcast to just be lecture, just talking about stuff, right? I've come so far, and I still have so far to go, right? I'll be completely healed and transformed when I'm in heaven, right? We all will, but I'm still on this healing journey, and I want y'all to come with me, and we can learn from each other, and we can grow together. And I would really love to talk to y'all. So reach out. It's you can email me unfeignedpodcast@gmail.com, or you can send me a message on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. And again, I appreciate y'all that have already done that. And I hope we can continue these conversations. Whether or not um, I'm able to talk to you as a guest on the podcast, which I would love to do someday, whether or not that happens, I still want to continue these conversations and talk to you, whether it be email or DMs on the social media platforms. Let's continue to grow together. Y'all, thank you so much for listening. Thank you. I appreciate y'all so much. Share this podcast with everybody you know. And until next time, we'll see you then.